Hello, my name's Hamish Kilburn, the editor of Hotel Designs. You're watching Hotel Designs Live on demand. This session was broadcasted on the 11th of May 2021, and the sessions were lifestyle, bathrooms, art, and workspace. Enjoy. Welcome back to Hotel Designs Live with me, Hamish Kilburn, the editor of Hotel Designs. This is our fourth and final session of the day, and following what we've already learned in earlier panel discussions, we're concluding this event by focusing the spotlight on workspace trends and how they're impacting hotel design. This session is sponsored by Shaw. Founded in 1925, Shaw Incorporated is widely known and acknowledged as the world's leading manufacturer of microphones and audio technology to the corporate, education, government, live events, and retail markets. More recently, though, the brand steered its attention to see what's possible in hospitality and workspaces when it launched a whole host of innovative products that cater to the demand of tomorrow's be-leisure travelers and locals alike. We'll be hearing all about these items from the brand's Chris Morley a little later on. But first, let's go live to the panel discussion. So now that the world has adapted new ways of working, the opportunities for hotels and hospitality establishments to design flexible spaces for business and leisure has never been greater. But how do you sensitively design co-working spaces that are both functional, aesthetically pleasing, and more importantly, on brand? We'll be hearing from leading designers, architects, hoteliers in this space to find out. And in fact, we are just hearing from designers, but what we're doing crucially is hearing from designers in different aspects of design. So from residential, hospitality, and workspace specifically. So I'd like to introduce today's panel. We have Megan Day, who is the partner at HBA San Francisco. Hi, Megan, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, how are you?
Good, thank you. So it's like 6 a.m. there, is it not? You're very dedicated to this panel discussion. We're very, very privileged to have you on.
Yes, you might hear the dump trucks outside, so apologies.
It's absolutely fine. Don't worry. We also have Tamara Aorek Akello, who is the head of interior design at Battersea Power Station. Now, Tamara, I'm really hoping that you can tackle this topic from probably a residential perspective. How far along is the Battersea Power Station in its development?
We are actually moving purchases into the second phase of our development. So the first phase was...
Oh, I think we've lost you, Tamara. We will
really
join Tamara.
excited.
Oh, there we go. Brilliant. We caught the end of that. And we also have Colin McGady, who is the Chief Creative Officer at BDG Architecture. Hi, Colin. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Hamish.
Great. And I think that you look at this from a real sort of workspace perspective. And I love the fact that together everyone's coming at this from different angles. What would you say are the major talking points in workspace design at the moment, Colin?
I think what we're seeing is a shift in work styles, if you like. So obviously remote working is going to continue. It's going to continue at a level it's never been at previously after the huge experiment of the last sort of 10, 12 months globally. So our focus at the minute is on that shifting work style. What are people doing when they're at home in terms of work? What are they doing when they're in the office? And perhaps what are they doing when they're remote? And in the context of this conversation, you know, which remote spaces will they be using to work in? So we're trying to get a real grip of, you know, the different activities that people do when they're at work.
And what would you say have been the major disruptions? Obviously, let's like address the elephant in the room. COVID-19 came crashing in like a huge elephant, planted its fat bum right in front of us and like was not going anywhere, and it's completely disrupted the industry. Workspace, I think, is probably the area that's going to change most, and I say that because a recent study I read recently, this morning in fact, I got a press release from a hotel brand, and they were saying that 23% of Brits that they surveyed aren't going to go back to working the way that they were working beforehand, working full time. They will go into this flexible space. How does that challenge design?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd actually say the number's bigger than that from the studies we've been doing globally. I mean, we've spoken to thousands of people over the last 10, 12 months on this topic. And I think
I got that wrong, Colin. Sorry, it's 23% who would go back to their working life.
well, there you go. That makes it about aligned with what we were seeing. So that's quite interesting to see that sort of backs up the studies we've been doing as well. So what I'd say, the biggest disruption, and this is going to sound terrible particularly if you employ people, as we all do, is that degree of trust that suddenly everyone would say, we love our staff, we value our staff, we trust our staff. Actually, when the pandemic hit and we had to send everyone away, I think one of the most big significant disruptors was the fact that we learned how to trust, and that unless you could trust your people to do their job when they weren't present in front of you in an office space, you were going to have a very difficult time. And the second degree of trust was trust in our technology and our infrastructure and the platforms that like we're using now, like Zoom, for example. If you think about it, remote working and video conferencing have been around for a very, very long time. We just didn't do them at the scale we're doing them now. And the biggest blocker to that was trust. So I think that's been the biggest significant shift, is that leadership teams, businesses, entrepreneurs, people who are starting up businesses will suddenly find that they can operate in a way that they couldn't operate in before. And that's the exciting moment. That's where there's going to be a lot of energy over the next few years in workplace design, is capturing what those new organizational models look like, how much of an impact they can have, not just on business and business performance and people and well-being, but I think on the planet in general. We're going to see a huge shift in terms of how we use our built environment and how we travel and how we communicate. And so I think that's where the excitement sits.
Yeah, and as with a lot of these conversations, COVID-19 is just the catalyst for the conversation to evolve into a new era. But I mean, I would say that there was a change happening in workspace design anyway. Megan, maybe you can explore that a little bit further. Do you think that we're seeing a change before the pandemic hit?
We're seeing a change in regards to, workspace and then hospitality too. We were starting to do flexible schedules anyway. It was something stateside. A lot of operators, a lot of ownership groups were doing, where you could work in the office a few days a week and then work because of travel and job site visits. So we were already starting a little bit of that flexibility in the technology of Zoom, of team calls. And then, with COVID, it just kind of put us in the forefront of a total change, where we had started the change, but a full change. So once we start to come back, I think, as Colin had said, it's going to be completely different, at least stateside too, of doing kind of a 50-50 split, or 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and kind of designing the offices to accommodate that.
And Tamara, obviously the Battersea Power Station development is, it sort of shelters residential hospitality as well, working in tandem. How has the recent situation changed your decisions moving forward as that development progresses?
I think plans haven't largely changed. I think it's called for us to add additional resources in places that we wouldn't have thought of before. And also, I think largely consider connectivity more than we've ever done before. So just making sure that homeowners and people that visit site all have access to all of the resources and everything on site that they'd like to, and putting resources into key areas for enjoyment as well. I think largely, obviously, if we're all going to be working from home and like to have a work-life balance, you'd like to be able to enjoy the space that you live in as well. So adding resources.
And how does that work? So obviously at the beginning of the project, when the concept has been laid out, the budget has been divided up. Now that something so culturally shifting has changed the way in which people travel, the way in which people are going to travel in the short term at least, do you then put more budget into the research of products and new elements within that designed space?
It's it's a constant conversation within the development, largely between the sales team, who are on the front line. Essentially, they speak to all of the homeowners. They know what their changes are and what they're requiring, but also in terms of adjusting budgets adequately and finding and really deciding where are the key areas that need additional resources, and pulling back and also adding it in places that you can afford to do. But largely, I think it's always just working adaptably to make sure that we have enough resources, but also enough people, because essentially that's a key consideration for us moving forward.
Absolutely. So it's pretty clear to me that this hybrid workforce model is going to take shape in a lot of businesses. How will this change the way the modern office will look, feel, and operate? Colin, maybe you can sort of help us with this.
I think it's an interesting one, and obviously it varies sector by sector and business by business. I mean, we work very much, with individual clients to get that tailored specifically to them. But in general terms, and I don't think this will come as a surprise to anyone listening, of course, is that when we come into the office to work, we'll be focused more around collaboration and social engagement with our colleagues, right? So, the things that I think we've found easier to do virtually, that we're talking now, we're communicating and we're connecting, but actually there's nothing replaces that human face-to-face interaction. And also those, I think historically it would be called the water cooler moment, right? I mean, not so much anymore, it happens all over the place, but those sort of chance encounters where you bump into someone or you see something or you hear a conversation that maybe you don't hear on a Zoom call because you've not been dialed into it. Those moments are missing, and those moments tend to be where innovation comes from. So for a lot of organizations that genuinely rely on innovation to continually progress their business, will need their offices to do that. So when we come back, if we're all coming back to hang out, basically, which is pretty much what it's going to be, whether that's formal collaboration or socializing, as you can imagine, the makeup of that working environment is going to shift. And I don't think it's necessarily that we're going to see like new things or new spaces. We're going to see a recalibration of things that existed already. If I think of the majority of clients we were working with pre-pandemic, they were shifting, and you hinted at this yourself, they were shifting in this direction anyway. All that's happened is the pandemic's accelerated their action, basically, and they can move quicker because it's forced an element of change management that they were having to invest in before. So we're going to see less desks. If you're in the business of selling desks, it's not a great business to be in, as I would say. You might want to diversify your portfolio. But we're also going to see the whole range of spaces that people collaborate around is going to grow. So that landscape is going to vary. And again, already there was elements of this in the majority of certainly a lot of the creative or tech clients that we work with, whether it's small, medium, large, formal, informal, private, semi-private, tech-enabled, non-tech enabled, loud, noisy, quiet, contemplative spaces. That whole range exists. We're going to see that broaden and sort of mushroom, so that when people come in, they feel that they have the space that performs and can meet the demands that they have when they're in the office. And some of that focused, more individual work will continue to happen, but will now happen at home where they have, or remotely. Not everyone can work from home, but remotely where maybe they have the space to do that and without the distraction. So not like a completely new model, but certainly a huge sort of recalibration of the kind of trends that we were already witnessing pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think with that opens up a huge opportunity for hotels and hospitality. You mentioned there that not everyone will be working from home. They'll want to work in a remote space. And I feel as if that's where hotels can come in. Megan, I'm interested. I heard from a designer the other day, and I agreed somewhat that if you design a hotel, certainly in the lifestyle sector, around COVID-19 and to fit within COVID-19, it simply will not work, because obviously this is a short-term situation we're in. But I do feel as if workspace is going to be an interesting area that hotels can really utilize for the longevity. What conversations are you having with your clients in regards to injecting interesting workspace areas that are flexible to adapt to certain scenarios?
Well, right now what we're doing is, and all projects we're working on, we're kind of doing two plans and two options, right? So we're doing a COVID-friendly plan. So it's the spacing, the distancing, but also when this does kind of change over in the next few years, they do want to be able to, kind of go back and pack in bodies and have certain groups and certain sizes of seating groups, right? When it comes to co-working spaces in the hotels, when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to F&B, et cetera. So what we're doing is you're kind of doing a two-part series at the moment. We're doing, kind of a social distance plan option, but then we're also allowing these spaces that we design to be able to shift to a greater number in a year or two, so that it can accommodate and adapt and change as the restrictions and regulations of COVID change as well.
Totally. And what I find interesting as well is that, in regards to the workspace itself. I mean, things like biophilic design, just think about air quality. That were all things that we were naturally very good at in hotel design and workspace design, I would argue as well. So it does come down to a bit of a perception game. And I'm just wonder how much you change of design moving forward when you actually look at the core basis of what goes into these projects, they are naturally safe spaces and hygienic.
Mm-hmm. What we're seeing too is a lot of change on the operator side. So we're seeing, it's something that was in development, but something that wasn't fully vetted, let's say, in regards to safe environment and cleanability, air quality. It was evolving, but now we've really seen a push from operators talking to Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, a really rush forward of some new products, some new protocols, some new ways to implement into all of their properties. So it's something that's still evolving and developing, but we are seeing a lot of elements that are growing and changing. You talked about biophilic, you talked about natural plants, natural oxygen levels, but we're also seeing changes in regards to systems, cleaning systems, rooms, public spaces. How do you sanitize? How do you maintain, etc. So I think in the next year, you're going to see a lot more movement in hotels as you travel, and you'll see a lot more systems that are in place.
And it's pretty well known, but a lot of brands before this situation were looking at co-working spaces and those models to kind of replicate that private members feel, as in being part of a group, being part of a society. If hotels do adapt, and I mean speaking generically, and then offer these spaces that are naturally very comfortable to work in, do you see that model changing or being affected by that?
No,
it's a question to everyone.
Yeah, and I'll jump in first on the hotel side. I think it'll continue to, because everyone likes to be in a space, the same space, and be able to work in the same space with others, right? As Colin and Tamara were talking about earlier. So we don't see that changing. I think there'll be some restrictions, as we open up, but I think that we're not seeing a change, and we're not seeing a change in regards to ownership's requests for that. And we haven't seen a change in regards to operator requests to change those spaces and not have them and not develop them. So I think over time, it'll become more open, and there'll be more open spaces, but I'll defer to Tamara and Colin as well.
Yeah, of course. So Tamara, just so that you can pick up on that, in the projects you're working on in particular, what public areas are there for the residential clients, and will they, will they be like lobbies in a sense?
Sure. We've got a large amount of, obviously, because we have various phases, we tend to concentrate on those specific phases having a completely different look and feel. And again, us being a future forward developer, we try and implement as much as we can with that in mind to really consider the ways and tastes that change, which helpfully has been really good for us in terms of managing COVID, because we've been able to be relatively reactive to those kind of wants and requirements. But much like Megan said, I don't think we've really experienced a request to change things. It's more to adapt them in small ways, which make it a lot easier for people to use the space. So I can see that working long term. I think ultimately we're all very much aware that we're waiting for the world to go back to normal. So we're all trying to be hopeful, I think.
I think we're all very Zoom fatigued as well. So everyone on this audience deserves a medal for bearing with us for so long. But Colin, I wanted to come to you in regards to the clients that you're working with. You work very much in the creative space with creative clients who understand the necessity of an interesting workspace. Do you think that the pandemic has opened that accessibility for other brands who wouldn't necessarily put so much emphasis in their design to design their spaces more creatively and thought-provokingly?
Yeah, 100%. I think when we entered the pandemic, before we knew how significant it was going to be and how long it was going to last, obviously working in the workplace sector, when every headline said the office is dead, you can imagine the amount of conversations I was having with mostly my parents saying, what are you going to do for a career now that the office is dead? It was sort of highlighting the fact that that's not strictly speaking the case, right? So it'll change, but it's not quite dead. I think what's been interesting for us, and I said this at the beginning at that time those conversations were happening, was actually a positive outcome for my studio would be actually exiting the pandemic with the clients in sectors that we never worked with before, for that very reason, that they've come to us for the more inspirational or innovative workspaces that begin to attract their talent back into their office buildings, that begin to pull their clients or their partners or their customers back into their spaces, that allow us to have that human connection in a meaningful way. I mean, one of our statistics from our studies shows that actually and you mentioned Zoom fatigue, we're all very comfortable now with very quick meetings and a huge quantity of them in a day, right? Because you just dial in, dial out, with that travel time in between, you can hang up quickly, connect to the next one very quickly. What we're hearing from the focus groups we're running is that meetings in the future will be longer and they'll be more meaningful because people will be together. So having a space that entices you back in to have those more meaningful connections with your colleagues or clients, I think is going to be super important. And then the final bit to pick up on what Tamara was saying earlier about, having the right people in place to support that and having the right service levels. I think there's particularly from our bigger, more established and mature kind of corporate creative clients, that understanding that good is no longer good enough is really interesting. The idea that when we bring people back in, we're really going to have to make that experience almost supercharged. And I think that's a really positive thing. I think for the workforce of the future, I think of my kids who are going to end up working, hopefully. You think about the environments that they're going to be moving into, or the culture, or the work life that they're going to adopt. I think the next generation is going to have a hugely sort of positive culture around work that's going to be, we might be 5-10 years away from seeing it really sort of bed in and become reality, but I think they're going to reach a really positive place.
I agree, and I think a lot of workspaces want to have that crossover, so that work becomes more of a lifestyle than a chore. Absolutely. As such. I certainly feel like that anyway, certainly in the creative space. Okay, so as mentioned in previous sessions, just quickly, we're going to go live to our product watch after this question. So just for our product watch page partners to prepare themselves. But as mentioned in previous sessions, at Hotel Designs, we do a lot of reading and writing on the sensory experience. And I'm just wondering whether you think this will take off in hospitality and obviously shifting into workspace as well, considering there are so many benefits to incorporate the sensory experience in regards to wellness.
Is that for
Megan,
me?
Maybe you want to start us off and then we'll work our way around.
No problem. No, I completely agree with you. I think, like I said, working with operators and ownership groups, a lot of operators are developing that sensory experience through the spaces. I think it's something that we'll continue to see evolve over this next 2 years, especially kind of that wellness aspect as well.
Brilliant. And Colin, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trick there is to not make it a one-off and to make it a consistent sort of experience that is continuous, redefines itself. It doesn't feel like it's a one-trick pony. It just happens once. It wasn't that great, and you forget about it, and it has a limited impact. So one of the challenges around experience, and particularly well-being, is being authentic about it. Not just doing it for the purpose of experience, but doing it for a real benefit to people's health. So that's the challenge really in the workplace.
And Tamara, I'm not sure if it's been addressed in Battersea Power Station development, but have you looked at the sensory experience? I mean, when it comes to lighting, sound, it's all very interesting. The conversations we're having very much steer towards that being a long-term solution.
I think exclusively within the apartments, we've injected a lot more consideration from the architectural point of view as to how we can really make those spaces more enjoyable using lighting alone. I think gone are the days of just a couple of spotlights. We're really trying to find ways that people can make their spaces as comfortable as possible, considering the amount of time we are spending in our homes and the fact that you can have a lot more adjustable and bespoke features as a basic package. So I would say that's the key consideration for us, is just ensuring that people get the most value out of their space and are able to enjoy it as much as they can.
I think that leads us really nicely into our product watch pitch segment, because we've got Shaw, who's our session sponsor, who's looking at microphones and when it comes to like the Zoom culture, And then we also have Well Lit, who are looking at lighting design as a solution for workspace and hospitality injecting workspace. So we're going to now join, we're going to start with Shaw. So if our speakers wouldn't mind just turning their cameras off while the product watch pitch segment takes place, and we'll start with Shaw, with Chris Morley. Hi, Chris.
Hiya, thanks, Hamish.
How you doing? No worries.
Yeah, not bad. All right,
Over to you.
All right, perfect. So as you can see, we've got the Shaw audio ecosystem there. The flexible nature of the Shaw audio ecosystem makes it suitable and scalable for all room types, from your small meeting rooms to multi-purpose seminar rooms, all the way up to banquet suites. As hotel workspaces become a more attractive option for workers adapting to a new normal, we're here to provide solutions that will enhance and support on-site meetings. So as you can see from the devices, we've got 3 array microphones, the MXA 910, the 710, and the 310. These microphones feature industry-leading steerable coverage technology. This allows you to configure the microphone lobes in such a way that you can reject any unwanted audio sources from HVAC systems and projectors, making sure you only hear the important audio coming from the speaker or delegate in the room. All of these microphones available in black, white, and aluminium. So next we'll move on to the brains of the operation. Oh, if we just go back a slide there, sorry. If we just we go to the brains of the operation for the digital signal processors, or DSPs for short. Again, we've got 3 options available. We've got the IntelliMix Room Software DSP, the IntelliMix P300, and the ANI USB Matrix. These DSPs offer flexible routing, allowing users to route any input to any output, whether that be Dante traffic or analog or USB audio, making connecting to room systems and collaborating with laptops and mobile devices easier than ever, which at the moment is ideal. We've also got the MXN 5C network loudspeaker. This is powered by PoE and PoE Plus right from the network switch, eliminating the need for any sort of outboard amplifier. And we also have the MXA mute button, and it does exactly what it says in the tin. So what are the benefits of the ecosystem? If we just pop to the next slide, please. So there's no other hardware or software platforms that offer quicker out of the box configuration. We hold compatibility certifications with multiple third-party platforms for easy integration. It's one point of contact for technical support for the entire audio signal chain. And from microphone to loudspeaker, your audio content is secured with Shaw audio encryption. Everything is designed to work together seamlessly from one vendor and one point of sale. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. And I just wanted to mention that so Shaw are obviously very well known in professional music industry, and moving into the hospitality space, it's a really exciting venture for them. And I think it's a really meaningful one, and shows that technology that's injected in those products are industry standard, and I think would work really well in co-working spaces. So Well Lit. So next we have Darren Parnaby, who has 10 years experience designing lighting schemes. So as well, obviously this is a brand, but Darren, I think we're really going to understand in a minute your experience. I'm sure that will come out in your pitch. Hi, Darren.
Hello, thanks, Hamish. Our modern lives defy the planet's natural day and night cycles, messing with our circadian clocks. With the help of dim-to-warm LEDs, we can better synchronize ourselves with our spaces. Workspaces, for instance, should be lit with white light, as it contains more of the blue frequencies that we need to stay alert and be more productive. This white light, however, isn't appropriate on an evening when the function changes. Our bodies naturally seek more of the reds and ambers in order to relax. Until recently, our only option when designing a multi-use space was to settle on a compromise, as we were only able to specify static colour temperatures, most commonly 2200, 700 and 3000 Kelvin. With our latest range, we now offer both decorative filament lamps and architectural downlights, spotlights and strip with a dim-to-warm technology. This 95mm globe beside me here, smooth dims with leading or trailing edge from 2900 Kelvin to 2000 Kelvin, as you can see now, consumes 8 watts of power and outputs 400 lumens. Interestingly, it's just come back from independent testing with a CRI score of 98.3, which we believe to be the highest in the world for an LED lamp. For those that don't know, the CRI value defines the quality of light and describes how well the light renders colours in objects. So you can rest assured that your fabrics and furnishings will look as beautiful and true to life as possible. We also offer these lamps in a range of shapes, sizes, from candles, golf balls, through to globes as well. And we also, the artwork behind me is illuminated using our Sorum 40 spotlight, made in Britain. This is our smallest spotlight at 40mm diameter, boasts an impressive spec, capable of delivering near 1,000 lumens, 13 watts of power, and dims from 3,100 Kelvin down to 1,800 Kelvin. With 97 CRI, it again renders colours beautifully, and we also offer a larger spot and a downlight in the same range as well. So now you can have a well-lit and productive workspace that also doubles as a beautifully warm and well-lit bar and lounge without any compromise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. Darren, I have one question, because I feel as if, as a supplier, you deserve the opportunity to answer this, because a lot of designers will say, you know, circadian rhythm, these lighting, the technologies is all well and good, but does it meet the budget? How would you argue against that?
As with everything, you can suit a budget anyway. I mean, for a while now, we've had what we call in the industry is tunable white, which essentially is mixing various color temperatures in a single product. But what that requires is a higher level of control, because you're essentially mixing multiple circuits of different color temperatures to get to where you want to be. But with dim to warm, as it kind of states, you simply dim one circuit of power, mains power, and the product temperature dims with it. So it's very affordable is the answer to that.
Yeah, there are affordable solutions out there.
There certainly are, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Darren. And obviously head over to the chat, because I'm sure Darren and Chris will be sharing the links to all of those products and where you can get more information as well. So I'd like to now bring back our speakers, if you wouldn't mind. And I also want to take this opportunity just to say to the audience, if you want to submit any questions, you can do so through the Q&A function below. Also want to just say that once the session is finished, we will share the recording on Hotel Designs in a few weeks. We're going to start an editorial series after this session, and every week we will share one of the sessions that we've hosted today. So welcome back, Colin, Tamara and Megan. So we've got a question here from the audience, and it's from Amrit Naru. So here's the question. So I'm currently working on a project, a co-working space / public areas with a client in a refurbished space. They're insisting on a more sophisticated meeting and event system, such as HEPA filters and ventilation. It's having a significant impact on the design of the space. What does the panel feel what does the panel feel about the increasing desire of this intervention? That's an interesting point. Megan, maybe you could start us off on that.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see more of this. I think that there's ways to hide, not necessarily hide, I don't want to say that, but integrate into design. You know,
that's fair enough.
Right? They're never nice. I think that there's a lot of creative ways. I know Armstrong Ceiling Systems is updating their new ceiling systems to be able to accommodate some of these filtration systems for workspace, public workspace areas. I know that there's a lot of portable screening elements now that do carry that as well. So I think that you're going to see, and you're seeing a lot of creativity happening right now. I know it's quite early and quite soon, but you're seeing that with design and you're seeing that with product, that it's evolving to accommodate something that we're all going to have to integrate with all of our properties per ownership and operator.
Colin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think long term, I think we'll see a shift in kind of the base build infrastructure and how we set out our architecture to deal with ultimately, I think what will come as probably legislation. We'll see sort of more stringent sort of, requirements on us as designers to make our spaces healthy. And, and it's been a challenge for a while. If I think about some of the, in London, a project we did, it was a 200-person sort of amphitheater inside a commercial office building, and just trying to get the structure and the MEP requirements and the air quality and the heating and the cooling and acoustics and everything set for that space in essentially an environment over 2 floors that have been designed for open plan desking. You're constantly struggling with the volumes you've got and the ability to get all of those requirements in and, meet code and meet licensing and regulations. I think as we see legislation change, requirements become more stringent, and I believe more positive as well. To that point earlier, our environment should become better for us as humans. I think we'll need to see the developers from the base sort of, you know, grow our architecture and develop that at the same time to allow us to make those, you know, the sort of integration that Megan was talking about and the coordination between different systems, make that work really effectively rather than it constantly be a challenge and a sort of design problem to solve.
I think also in some of the sessions that we've hosted today, one of the solutions that was brought up was, I mean, we've had sessions on art, we've had sessions on lifestyle, we've had sessions on bathrooms, and it's all very well listening to what we're saying, solutions, but actually you really need to listen to the design narrative of your brief and be creative in your decisions. There is not a cookie cutter approach. And I personally think it's very transparent when designers, you know, just take the latest innovation and plonk it into the design scheme. But I would look at things like carpet design. It's becoming a lot more sophisticated, and the technology within the carpets manufacturing means that they can create zonings within that, but also zoning through lighting. I think we've just heard from Well-Lit in regards to lighting, but also I don't know, I think the sensory experience has a large part of that as well. I mean, we talk about the sense, talk about sound, which was a huge topic that we put under the spotlight in the last event of Hotel Designs Live back in February. We talk about sound in regards to acoustics, but does sound have a place in a public area when we're trying to evoke that workspace mentality? I don't know if we're quite there yet. What do you think?
I think it's sound or acoustics is a hot topic, and it has been for a number of years in workplace design. And I strongly disagree with some of the metrics.
But Colin, do you think, just quickly, do you think that aside from acoustics, do you think sound, as in like evoking sound, evoking you know, the natural wellness through sound, do you think that has a place? That's what I'm quite interested in, because I feel as if we've been talking about acoustics for a long time, and I agree with your point. There's a lot that's been said, but I don't hear much about actually using sound and utilizing sound.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to get to. I think the requirements or the standards that you're asked to hit almost are counterproductive in doing exactly what you're saying, which is introducing sound in a positive way to help a space feel or provide a different type of mood or atmosphere or liveliness. And so I think that's the exercise that we have to get away from, is that tick box exercise around acoustics has to be repositioned to allow the freedom creatively, I guess, to look at sound in a positive and I guess a sort of an addition to a design, a spatial design or a sort of built environment design. And that's the bit that's missing at the minute. We're too busy going down one route, and that's restricting it, opening up in a new phase.
No, I completely agree with you. We've got another question that's come in from an anonymous attendee. Do you think, and it works really well with obviously Shaw being our session sponsor, do you think audio and video technology will feature more highly in design rather than just being added in as an afterthought? Tamara, perhaps you can pick this one up. I think it's quite interesting, considering where you are in the stages of Battersea Power Station. I wonder, like a few years ago, whether things would have been different. Should we have had the pandemic then on what's sort of being developed now?
I think specifically for us, because we're a very large site, and we are a site that's competing with not only construction, but also people living in the space. Sound is always something that we have to be very mindful of in terms of making sure the experience is a pleasant one, but also makes people aware of what's around them. So not to necessarily disguise it, but also to just kind of make it feel as comfortable as possible. So I think we've worked really hard to integrate a lot more sound and AV definitely throughout our show homes and in our sales suites as well, to really make that an experience that makes you aware of the product that you're buying into, the look and feel of the community, and invoke a really strong image as to who we are. So I think it's incredibly useful, and I think it's something that generally developers do put a lot of money into. Thankfully, obviously it's a huge part of marketing, but I think that's set to really continue because designers really do it well when they do it.
And Megan, I mean, from your perspective, hospitality design, up until now, I can imagine those elements, those small elements of, you know, the hardware of a sound or visual AV system, they wouldn't have ranked so highly up the agenda in regards to what you're focusing in design. But I can imagine that's changed recently in the last couple of years. And I don't just mean because of the pandemic, I mean around how people's behaviors, travelers have changed.
Correct. And, you know, AV in hotels was always what we did at the last minute, right? It was always at the end of the presentation. It was after the documentations are done. And all of a sudden we've got to integrate AV. Now, which is very exciting in the last 2 to 3 years, is AV is the first thing we talk about while we're doing design. So we bring on the AV consultants. Technology is huge. It's number one. And then of course, acoustics. I mean, these are all things that, you know, it was like, we'll get someone down the road, you know, after we get the design done, we'll integrate it, but it was the last minute. Now they're part of the design process, which is fantastic. And it's across the board for all hotels, which is great.
So with that in mind then, so it sounds to me as if there's been a seismic shift in the way in which we approach design due to the consumer demands. Is there anything now then that's off the agenda that you expect to return back onto the agenda? And we're not talking about sound anymore, but is there anything else, maybe technology or I don't know? I mean,
I think technology. I'm in, you know, San Francisco is the tech capital of the world, so we're kind of at the forefront of what we're seeing. We're seeing, which is interesting, a use of robots. We're seeing the use of robots in regards to concierge and maintenance and cleaning and food service. So we're kind of seeing this, you know, we've always had technology, better Wi-Fi, et cetera, but now we're seeing kind of the integration of a lot more items technology wise. When I talk about, like, you know, robots, room service, apps for each hotel, each property, being able to, and we're seeing this, I think, with Virgin Hotels, where you can check in on an app, but you can also look at that app and see each room. So you can actually pick the room, do a 3D visual of that room, which we couldn't do before. So the integration of technology is definitely the number one forefront with hospitality in general.
And with that in mind, then we cross very delicately into the territory of being too gimmicky. I mean, you mentioned robots, and I know that obviously they would be meaningfully placed, but we had that awful era in hotel design a few years ago where technology was injected into everything for the sake of it, and I think we very much took and that's a very general statement, I appreciate that, but well, we took inspiration from what was working in residential and it didn't quite work in hospitality. Colin, from your perspective, how do we avoid those gimmicky situations?
It's back to that thing about it being meaningful, isn't it? I think, you know, in intelligent buildings and sensor technology and apps and so on have been around in workplace for a while. They're being more widely adopted, I'd say that. And I think, again, that's something we'll see increase. I'm interested in if you take the leisure technology, the things like the Fitbit and the wearable watches and how the facial recognition on our phones, how that's all going to play a part in the future. And if you think about the hybrid model of working from the office or working remotely, you know, will your technology tell you on any given day, you know, where you should be? Do you wake up in the morning and your facial recognition on your phone says you're not looking very happy today, and your watch tells you you're sweating a little bit, and maybe you're not very well? You should stay at home today. Maybe the decision isn't ours; it's made in conjunction with technology, and I think there's some interesting sort of health, you know, leisure, Fitbit, all that. I can see that world molding together and making our lives feel like, again, you know, when we're going somewhere or making a decision, we're making it meaningfully with not just gut feel, but insight.
And I mean, this was not prearranged, or it's purely circumstance, but we invited you all on the panel because you obviously all come at this topic from different angles, from a residential perspective, a hospitality perspective, but also a pure workspace perspective. And one of our earlier speakers, Naomi Heaton, who was the CEO of the Portfolio Club, they've just rebranded to be the Other House. And the whole idea of that concept is to take the best out of all worlds, and I think that's kind of lovely, and it's nice for us to be able to sum up in this session. But what elements of hospitality do you feel as if will be injected best in workspace, and vice versa? What elements of workspace will be sort of influenced by hospitality, and what can they learn from each other just through talking?
Sorry,
Megan. I'll be very quick. I think we've seen it for a while. You know, we've been sort of hybrid between hospitality and workplace. In my world, you know, we've been seeing more and more of hospitality come in. I think the most significant takeaway, and I think the bit that will remain, is the feeling you get, like the human feeling you get from just that informality of, it's not overly structured, it's not overly, you know, I've got a desk of a monitor, or I'm in a room, in a meeting room. I love that lobby arrival experience, that kind of, you know, bumping into people, that hugely informal human interaction piece. That's the bit that, forget the furnishings and the lighting and maybe the quality of the look and feel, but you know, the human sort of qualities around, you know, really good arrival experiences, really good opportunities for informal interaction are the bit that I'd like to see really get ramped up in the future office. And it's been happening, but I think we need more and more of it.
Yeah, I agree. And Megan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so, you know, we're seeing a lot more, we've done a lot of hotels recently where we've added workspace, right? Where we've added, instead of the standard meeting rooms, you know, it's flexible rooms, right? It's flexible seating. And we've been asked to, they've ripped out some restaurants and added more of these workspace rooms and workplace rooms because it's been so successful. It's been a high demand for people to be able to meet in a public space, have these quick meetings together, and then, you know, move forward to the restaurant and move forward to their next meeting. So we're seeing a lot of, you know, Colin was saying a lot of workplace being added more into hotels. You know, we always had meeting rooms and it was more of your standard. And now we have these flexible spaces that are really evolving.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and they don't work in this industry. And they said, I was mentioning that I would, you know, if I'm in London, I would just go and be in a hotel and do some work and just grab a coffee. And they were totally shocked by that concept. They thought that you actually had to check into a hotel to enjoy and use the public spaces. But it seems to me like we know that, we've known that for a while, but there seems to be like a perception of not crossing that boundary into a hotel. I feel as if we're breaking down that boundary, but have we got further to go?
We've got further to go. I think the New York market was fantastic at, and I'm not as familiar with the London market, so apologies, but the New York market was fantastic where, you know, you have the Ace Hotel. It's all public space. It's accessible by anyone. You can work anywhere. Your Wi-Fi is free. You can order coffee from wherever, and that whole space is that open space. And a lot of hotels have adapted to that. So we've seen the New York market kind of, you know, start the forefront of that, and we're starting to see other markets, you know, open up to that as well.
And a particular point you mentioned there is service working with design. Ace Hotel works because the brand and the concept are very much evokes that that comfortable nature of using the public areas, and it's not a case of this is cornered off for a certain person.
Exactly.
Totally. We have Workspace in pub areas, which is the main sort of model moving forward. But I think an area which we haven't really touched upon is in the guest rooms. And a session we had earlier was looking at bathrooms and how in recent years, the workspace in a guest room has become less important, arguably. And so therefore the budget has been increased in the bathrooms because that's been an important element, obviously evoking wellness. Do you see that continuing? Do you see that reversing somewhat because of what's happened recently? Or what do you think, how do you think that will evolve?
We've seen a lot of development with the guest rooms, right? And evolving the guest room. Yes, the bathroom experience, that spa, that wellness experience. We're also seeing, which is an interesting shift, is bringing fitness on demand into your room, right? So, you know, kind of having that wellness aspect, having, you know, that integrated mirror where you can do your workouts. It's digital. It's something that you can bring this into your room. So really evolving this room where it is a wellness experience by having a great bathroom, having a great shower experience, and less, let's say, in the room, but more adaptability to a wellness experience with fitness.
And has anyone else got anything to add, Tamara, perhaps from your perspective?
I think the number one request and conversations that we've been having with purchasers and homeowners has generally been about wellness. And I think that's no way going to stop anytime soon. I think if we weren't all aware of the importance of taking care of ourselves and really investing in those kind of tools, we're definitely in a place now where I think everybody's really understanding the value, not only from a design perspective, from a personal benefit also. So I think that's going to massively continue in the future. And I think that developers are a lot more aware of it as well. So they're enhancing their specifications for those spaces specifically because of client requirements.
Yeah, and I think those requirements are the same in the public areas as they would be in the guest rooms. Therefore, it's just an extension of the design scheme into those areas for sure. Okay, so moving forward, designers who are working to convert a hotel into a workspace friendly area, they're working on a budget. What advice would you give them? What pitfalls should they avoid? I'm just aware that not everyone's got a large budget on the projects they're working with. At the moment, there's a lot of renovations happening in time for hospitality when it reopens, obviously globally. What pitfalls would you suggest to avoid? Colin, perhaps from your perspective.
I'd suggest they increase their budgets. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think, as I touched upon right at the very beginning, the world of work is changing quite dramatically, and it's not going to settle for a long time. I think this, my first word of warning would be, don't get too prescriptive about what your spaces are. We're about to enter, particularly in workplace, we're about to enter an age of kind of experimentation. So if you're going to reconfigure space that Megan was talking about into workspace, make sure it's flexible. Make sure you're not building in, inflexibility to your systems or your infrastructure, and that you can adapt over time as the needs of the workforce adapt, because what we've been going through over the last few months isn't going to be the same as it's, as the world opens back up and hotels open back up and our offices open back up. We're going to see a period of shifting until it settles and we understand what the future of work really is. So even with a lot of our corporate clients, that's what I'm saying, is just be aware you're not going to get it right now. So make sure you've built in the flexibility to get it right in the future.
Yeah, totally. I don't know, Tamara, have you got anything to add from your perspective?
I think, as Colin said, adaptability is probably the key area that I think anyone should really be investigating. But I think also comfort. I think it's a really small part of your experience relative to everything else. But ultimately, it's the reason why you sit in that hotel for 5 or 6 hours, as opposed to 2 or 3 quickly in a really short time slot. So I'd say just really investing some time in looking at textures and fabrics that are not only supportive, but really help in terms of well-being and comfort long-term. They're the 2 key areas. I think adaptability is number 1 though, for me.
Totally. And I wanted to touch upon, we have touched upon this today, the way in which the modern traveller their travels are changing. And perhaps that's down to the durations of their stay. When they're there, maybe they're wanting to soak up more of the atmosphere, more of the culture. Do you think this will put a strain on hotels to incorporate workspaces? And I'm not suggesting that adapting public areas to create co-working spaces is going to work for all hotels. But I certainly do think that there's going to be a perception or a demand for at least a space where people can sit down and work remotely when they're traveling as well. And I think maybe Megan, you're probably best to attack this one.
Yeah, I think it depends on a little bit of location as well in regards to, resorts versus urban hotels. But I think everyone in the last 5 years, they've been really great about adapting workspace. I think hotels, you're seeing a large shift too of just the question before about, how do designers adapt to these workspaces? I think it's plug and play. I think it's making sure that every item, every piece of furniture has availability to plug in something. So you can work, whether it's a phone, and like I said, we're not talking hardwire application, as our lighting team knows on this call and sponsorship, but it's actually something that can plug into existing outlets through the furniture piece, and basically making your furniture adaptable to that, because people will work wherever they can as long as there's a seating element. I think it's the ownership groups making sure that there is adaptability and that things are wired and available to work and plug in.
But then do you also think that there'll be a rise of demand for tech-free spaces as well? If we're going to be connected all the time, surely in the hotel, there should be an area where we get rid of technology.
It's interesting because, we've seen that in a lot of, let's say, private clubhouses like the Soho House. We have a private club here in San Francisco as well that has the hospitality. And a lot of the spaces within there are doing the no tech rooms. So I think that this is something that is, it's starting. I don't think it hasn't been requested or there yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of movement on that.
It's interesting. Yeah. Colin, I don't know if you've got anything to add in regards to, removing the tech from a design scheme in certain areas.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in pre-pandemic, we were ramping up technology in office space. And I think with Zoom and let's not just use Zoom, but Teams or whatever sort of software platforms we're using, I think we will see an increase in tech-free zones in the future in workplace as a result of people trying to get away from exactly this. You're looking at a screen 8, 10, 12 hours a day from the comfort of your own home. Perhaps when you're in the office, you're going to get away from technology, ironically, considering how much has been invested in recent years in exactly that. So I can see it, I can definitely see it creeping in.
So we have 2 new questions that have come in, one of which from my good friend, Lara Good. I like what I did there. Thanks for the great points and discussions. I'm wondering how hotels, particularly in smaller public areas, can use design to comfortably combine work and leisure spaces together, ensuring guests of all types feel comfortable and inspired. That's an interesting point, I think. Megan, perhaps you can address this.
Yeah, I think it's, we're seeing a change, like I said, of the standard meeting room, right? And let's say the standard meeting room can seat, let's say 50 people. What we're seeing is taking that meeting room, breaking it down where it has a private space within there, but then there's also kind of a library feel and aspect where it has communal tables, individual seating. So it is still a meeting space, but it's not your traditional meeting space where it's, 10 tables and chairs set up. It's actually different elements and different components that are integrated into kind of more of this traditional space, but in a more modern way, in a very open working environment.
Right. Has anyone else got anything to add? Because there is another question. So the next question is, I want to steer it towards Tamara, really. So very interesting comment about fitness on demand in guest rooms. How do I, as a hotelier, add this option to my rooms? Fitness equipment takes up so much space. So I cannot see this being done effectively. It said SEO. So I was like, what is that? But it said it's meant to be C. So I think what Michael Greenall is asking is, how can we hide the fitness element and that practical element of a guest room, but also give the guests what they want?
I mean, in terms of hiding it, I think there's always options which are for low maintenance types of fitness, as opposed to the high powered cardio type fitness, which is traditional and is ultimately what a lot of people prefer. But there are lots of really smart solutions for, I would argue, more wellness type fitness, yoga mats, those kind of things, and even boxing facilities, which are really easy and discreet to hide away, but add the option for somebody who's really keen to keep the fitness element in there. Ultimately, I think, you can only do so much to disguise the fitness area, largely if it's fitness
and I'm
area.
really sorry, I've definitely just put you on the spot, and I'm sorry about that.
It's fine, I get it. It's a question that I think a lot of homeowners begin to look at when they decide that that's something they want to do. But I am all kind of the feeling that you've got to commit to it slightly if you are going to do it properly.
Totally.
Yeah, but ultimately, I would probably advise more low fitness options.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And also a lot of these areas, they'll have gyms or sort of public areas where they are sort of fitness orientated. So it's nice to get a little hint in there. But I would also say, Michael, that don't just inject it into your hotel room just for the sake of it. Really think about the DNA of your brand and whether actually that's the most appropriate thing to do. Yes, it's a demand, but that doesn't mean that you have to cater to all demands. And I think that's an area in which some people get lost in this industry, because there's a lot of focus on what we should be looking at, the trends we should be looking at. And designers are very good actually at cutting through the noise, but I feel as if sometimes that can be lost along the way. So yeah, I would just like to add.
I do think investigation as to your demographic could really easily answer that, because knowing what kind of person uses it and what they use it for could really help iron that out really quickly.
Absolutely, and dictate how much space you associate to that. So we're actually out of time, unfortunately, but I just wanted to thank Colin, Tamara and Megan for joining us. It's been a really interesting conversation. I feel as if we've only just scratched the surface, which I think was expected, considering how much emphasis is on workspace at the moment and how developed, things are moving on, and the evolution there. So thank you, Colin. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Megan. I just wanted to end by saying that we are now going to launch an editorial series that's going to publish all of the articles from the recordings that we've did today. So there'll be 4 editorials, and that will start next week, where we'll launch our first session, and we'll go on from there. Secondly, they launched the Britlist Awards. Nominations and applications are now open. Head over to the website hoteldesigns.net, click on the events tab and scroll down to the Britlist Awards to find out about that. If you want catch up with us in regards to what we're working on, you can do so. My email address is h.kilburn@forumevents.co.uk. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting Hotel Designs Live again. Finally, we are back on the 10th of August for our next installment of Hotel Designs Live. The sessions have been decided. We are bringing you sessions on sleep, surfaces, social, and I always forget one, sensory experience, arguably one of the most important. So we're going to be discussing those topics at Hotel Designs Live on August 10th. More information about how you can secure your tickets and also who our confirmed speakers are will emerge very shortly. Thank you for everyone who's been involved, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.